Have you ever felt like you're constantly busy, just, relentlessly moving from one task to the next, yet at the end of the day, you feel completely disconnected, maybe a little stressed, and not truly present in any of it?
Hmm.
Or have you found yourself caught up in worries about the future, or maybe regrets about the past, even when things are objectively going pretty well, like when you're supposed to be relaxing and enjoying the moment?
Oh, absolutely. That feeling of being perpetually out of sync with the present moment, that kind of internal struggle you're describing, it's something Professor Ronald D. Siegel tackles with incredible insight. He's a clinical psychologist at Harvard Medical School, and his course, The Science of Mindfulness, a
Yeah.
research-based path to well-being from the great courses, really unpacks this. He makes this compelling case that our brains are, in many ways, sort of hardwired for this very struggle.
Hardwired. Wow.
Yeah, but the truly revolutionary part is that the solution, the path to a more engaged and peaceful existence, it isn't some external fix. It's actually within our grasp through the scientifically backed practices of mindfulness. So our mission today is to take you on a deep dive into that science, why our minds tend to wander off, why we often feel stressed, and how these practical mindfulness techniques can genuinely transform your relationship with your own thoughts and feelings, really leading to greater well-being.
Okay, let's unpack this right from the start then. So what is mindfulness, really? Because I think a lot of us, myself included sometimes, might think it's about trying to empty our minds, right? Or just like chilling out in some perfectly zen state, hoping all those nagging thoughts just poof, disappear. Is that what Professor Siegel means by it?
That's a super common starting point.
Yeah.
And it's definitely a misconception Professor Siegel addresses head on.
Mm.
He clarifies that mindfulness, as it's used in Western psychology and neuroscience, it's actually a translation. It comes from the Pali word sati, which carries connotations of awareness, attention, and this is crucial, remembering to be aware and pay attention.
Mm.
It's not passive.
Remembering to be aware.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. He emphasizes it isn't about becoming thoughtless or achieving some kind of blank mind. Instead, he defines it really simply as awareness of present experience with acceptance.
Acceptance.
It means actively observing your thoughts, your feelings, sensations as they arise, but without judgment. It's about changing your relationship to your internal experience rather than trying to control it or push it away. And that acceptance includes a kind of non-judgment, like a kindness or friendliness towards yourself. Almost like, Carl Rogers or even Mr. Rogers taught us that gentle acceptance. It's a pretty profound shift in perspective when you think about it.
Awareness of present experience with acceptance. Okay, I really like that phrasing. It sounds approachable, but also, yeah, quite deep. But I can't help wondering, I think I am generally aware of my surroundings, what I'm doing day to day. Am I actually more mindless than I think I am? Is that common?
That's a great question, and it really gets to something fascinating Professor Siegel points out.
Mm-hmm.
He references the Dunning-Kruger effect here.
Oh, right. The Dunning-Kruger effect, where people aren't great at judging their own competence.
Exactly. And research actually shows that people who have done less mindfulness practice, they tend to rate their own mindfulness higher than those with more experience.
No way. Really?
Yeah, it's a bit of a paradox, right?
Yeah.
You actually need a certain level of mindfulness to even notice when your mind has wandered off or when you're just operating on autopilot.
Yeah.
Without that awareness, you simply don't recognize how often you're lost in thought. Professor Siegel gives some incredibly relatable examples of what he calls everyday mindlessness. He talks about driving on the Massachusetts Turnpike once and suddenly realizing he was going west instead of east, completely on autopilot. No conscious memory of making that wrong turn, just gone.
Wow. Okay, I've definitely zoned out while driving, but maybe not that much.
Huh. Well, maybe not. Or he mentions the surprisingly common bagel cutting incidents. Apparently, they're a leading cause of emergency room visits in Manhattan on Sunday mornings.
You're kidding! Cutting bagels.
Seriously, people are just so lost in thought, maybe replaying an argument, worrying about the week ahead, just generally mentally elsewhere, that they slice right into their hand while making breakfast. These aren't just minor slips. They're pretty stark reminders of how entirely disconnected we can become from what's happening right now, even when we're doing something that, probably requires our attention.
Okay, that bagel image is slightly terrifying, but yeah, a very stark reminder. It makes me wonder, though, why are we so prone to this autopilot mode?
Right.
Why do our brains seem almost set up for this constant internal struggle, this chatter, even when, like you said, we're supposed to be relaxing?
Yeah.
On a beautiful beach, maybe? Is there something just fundamentally baked into our biology?
Absolutely. And this is where the evolutionary perspective becomes really critical. It's a huge part of Professor Siegel's explanation for why our minds and brains are, in a way, predisposed to unhappiness.
Mm.
He points to 3 deep evolutionary tendencies. First off, there's the negativity bias.
Negativity bias. Okay, heard of that.
Right. So our ancestors lived in a world full of real physical threats, right? Survival was everything. This meant it was way safer to make, say, 1,000 false positive mistakes, like thinking a weird-shaped rock was a lion and running away.
Right. Better safe than sorry.
Exactly. Better safe than making one fatal false negative, which, would mean getting eaten. So our brains got hardwired to expect the worst, to constantly scan for threats, to find problems. The early humans who were maybe just chilling out, thinking positive thoughts all the time, they probably didn't survive long enough to pass on their genes.
Huh. Probably not.
So this ancient wiring means that today, our minds are still disproportionately drawn to potential problems, to bad news, to replaying negative stuff, even when there's no actual lion in the bushes.
So basically, our ancestors were like ultimate preppers, always bracing for the worst, and we inherited that system, and now it feels like this internal alarm bell that's just constantly ringing in our relatively safe modern lives.
That's a great way to put it, yeah. And that leads right into the second evolutionary factor, our fight, freeze, or flight system.
Ah, yes, fight or flight.
That whole physiological response, it was designed for acute, immediate physical threats. The classic saber-toothed tiger example. When it gets activated, it floods our bodies with stress hormones, gets us ready to react instantly. The problem now in modern life is that this emergency system gets triggered all day long, not by tigers, but by our thoughts. A looming deadline, an annoying email, traffic jams, social media comments, even just worrying about what's for dinner can set it off.
Oh, yeah. Definitely feel that sometimes.
And our bodies react as if we're in constant physical danger, leading to this whole cascade of stress-related issues. Chronic back pain, headaches, digestive problems, insomnia. Our bodies just aren't built for that level of sustained activation without a real physical release.
Okay, this is where it gets really interesting and honestly a bit unsettling. So these ancient survival tools, the very things that helped our species survive and thrive, they're now, in many ways, actively making us miserable in modern life. It sounds like our brains are almost working against our own happiness.
In many ways, yeah. At least by default, they kind of are. And there's a third factor, too. Our continuous evolutionary drive to seek pleasure and avoid pain.
Right, the carrot and the stick.
Pretty much. This system is obviously vital for survival and propagating DNA. It pushes us to eat when hungry, seek warmth, find a mate, all that. But in our complex world, it doesn't really sustain well-being for very long. Professor Siegel uses the example of buying a new car. There's often huge excitement leading up to it, the new car smell, the joy of driving it off the lot.
Oh, yeah, that feeling is great.
For a bit. But after a few days, maybe a few weeks, you habituate. You get used to it. The initial thrill fades, and you're kind of already looking for the next thing to buy, the next experience to chase. This phenomenon, sometimes called hedonic adaptation, means our motivational systems are constantly being pushed by past memories of pleasure and future fantasies, and it traps us in this cycle of striving that often doesn't lead to lasting happiness. It just leaves us feeling kind of unfulfilled.
Okay, wow. So our brains have this, ancient operating system, negativity bias, hyperactive fight or flight, this relentless pleasure treadmill. How does mindfulness practice actually help us update that system to live better now? I mean, can it really change our brains? It sounds like a massive ask trying to rewire millions of years of evolution.
That does sound like a big ask, doesn't it? But the science here is really unequivocally backing this up. That's what Professor Siegel emphasizes so strongly. Mindfulness practices aren't just offering philosophical insights or making you feel a bit better temporarily. They demonstrably retrain the brain.
Retrain the brain? How?
Well, neurobiological research using tools like fMRI scans shows these practices actually change both the structure and the functioning of our brains. For instance, they're seen to increase gray matter density in areas linked to attention, emotional regulation, self-awareness like the prefrontal cortex, which is key for executive functions.
Okay, so actual physical changes.
Actual physical changes. And they can also decrease activity and even the physical size of the amygdala, that's our brain's fear center. This helps us respond more calmly, less reactively, to things we perceive as threats. And what's maybe even more profound is that some studies suggest these practices might keep important parts of our brain from withering away with age, as he puts it. They can activate circuits tied to happiness and compassion. And get this, they might even lengthen telomeres.
Telomeres, those caps on our chromosomes.
Exactly, those protective caps that wear down with chronic stress and are linked to cellular aging and disease. The idea that mindfulness could literally slow aging at a cellular level, potentially boosting long-term physical health, that's a massive finding.
Oh, okay, that is profound.
It really is. And Professor Siegel notes that, the big annual conferences for the Association for Behavioral and Cognitive Therapies, the ABCT, which is like the main group for scientifically tested psychotherapies, they now feature a majority of presentations on mindfulness and acceptance-based treatments.
Yeah.
It's really at the forefront of scientifically supported interventions now.
That's genuinely compelling. Measurable changes, cellular level, brain structure. It's definitely not just a subjective feeling then. It's a real physiological shift. But I still come back to this. It seems difficult to actually do this in our everyday, crazy, fast-paced world, right? It's one thing to hear about it, quite another to integrate it when life is just demanding so much.
Yeah, that's a very practical concern, absolutely. And it's something the course directly addresses. The really good news is you don't need to become a monk or go on a month-long silent retreat to start seeing benefits. Not at all. The course highlights different types of mindfulness practices. There's formal practice, like sitting meditation, intensive practice, like retreats. But crucially, there are informal practices.
Informal, like what?
Things you can weave into your busy day to cultivate awareness without needing to stop everything. For example, taillight meditation
Taillight meditation.
in traffic.
Yeah. Next time you're stuck in traffic, instead of reaching for your phone or getting frustrated, just use the color, the reflections, the texture of the taillights on the car ahead as an object of meditation. Just really see them for a few moments. Take in the pure visual experience.
Okay.
Or think about shower meditation. Instead of mentally running through your to-do list or replaying an argument, pay full attention to the actual sensations, the thousands of water droplets hitting your skin, the warmth, the scent of the soap, the sound the water makes. There's even caller ID meditation. When your phone rings, before you grab it, just listen to the ringtone. Notice the number on the screen, and then just observe the emotional response that pops up before you answer. Is it excitement, annoyance, dread, curiosity? It just gives you that tiny space of conscious awareness before reacting. I have honestly never thought of traffic or my shower as meditation opportunities. It's so simple, but yeah, it totally shifts the perspective on those mundane activities.
It sounds like it's about what some cognitive scientists call single tasking our attention, rather than trying to multitask and just diluting our focus. Is that a fair way to think about it? Like our attention is a pie, and multitasking just gives tiny slivers to everything.
Exactly. That's a perfect analogy, and it aligns completely with Professor Siegel's message. What we often call multitasking is really just rapid task switching, and yeah, cognitive science confirms it comes at a mental cost. Your brain isn't actually doing 4 things perfectly at once, it's frantically jumping between them. And that just drains our cognitive resources, makes us less effective, and often leaves us feeling more stressed and scattered.
Right, I feel that scatter sometimes. So mindfulness helps us train ourselves to dedicate our full attention, that whole pie, like you said, to one thing at a time. By putting your full attention on that single task, whether showering or eating or truly listening to someone, even mundane activities become richer, more rewarding, less like just obstacles to get through. It helps you reclaim your focus and reclaim your present moment.
Okay. But playing devil's advocate here for a second, for someone listening who's maybe heard a lot about wellness or self-help already, isn't this just kind of common sense repackaged? Like slow down and smell the roses, or just think positive? What makes the scientific approach to mindfulness, the way Professor Siegel presents it, genuinely different from the general self-care advice we hear all the time?
That's a really fair and important question. It's a skepticism that comes up a lot, and it's one Professor Siegel directly tackles. He stresses this crucial distinction that separates mindfulness from just trying to think positive thoughts, or even from some traditional therapy approaches. It's not just about trying to swap bad thoughts for good thoughts. It's about fundamentally changing our relationship to all thinking.
Relationship to all thinking. How so?
Well, in traditional cognitive behavior therapy, or CBT, the goal is often to identify maladaptive thoughts, the unhelpful ones, and replace them with more adaptive or helpful ones. And that's effective, for sure. But mindfulness, as he puts it, is kind of like cognitive behavior therapy on steroids. Because it helps us see all thoughts, positive, negative, neutral, doesn't matter, as simply mental objects. They're like an itch you feel, or a physical ache, or like clouds just passing in the sky. They come, they go. They aren't necessarily objective reality, and crucially, they don't have to define who we are. This cultivates what he calls metacognitive awareness.
Metacognitive awareness, so awareness of our own thinking process.
Exactly. The ability to simply see thinking as it happens,
Mm.
to observe the process of thought without getting totally swept away by the content of the thoughts.
Wow. Okay. That distinction, that metacognitive piece, feels really key. Can you elaborate just a bit more on the implications of that? Because it sounds incredibly powerful.
It really is powerful. And it's not just an intellectual idea. It's a revolutionary shift in how we relate to our own internal world.
Hmm.
Think about it like this. Say you're about to give a big presentation, and this really anxious thought pops up. Oh no, I'm going to completely mess this up. Everyone will see I'm a fraud.
Yeah, familiar thought pattern for many, I imagine.
Right. So with mindfulness, instead of being that anxiety, getting totally swept away by it, you learn to observe it.
Ah, okay. I'm noticing an anxious thought about the presentation arising right now. See the difference? It creates this crucial little gap, a space between you and the thought. And in that space, you gain some power, some choice over how you react instead of just being automatically consumed by the thought.
That space. Okay, I see.
It means you don't necessarily need to get rid of the unpleasant feelings or thoughts. You learn to accept their presence. Just let them be there without fighting them. And paradoxically, that very acceptance, that willingness to just let them be, often lessens their power, their intensity. You disidentify from them. So the nuanced approach, which is backed up by those neurobiological changes we talked about, it moves way beyond simple distraction or trying to suppress things. It's a much more profound and potentially lasting transformation of how your mind operates. It really helps you become like the inner empirical scientist of your own experience. So if you remember just one thing from this whole deep dive, let it be this. Mindfulness isn't about achieving some state of perfect blank serenity or, being constantly happy all the time. That's not the goal. It's really about developing that skill of awareness of present experience with acceptance. It's about cultivating an inner empirical scientist, like we said, observing the patterns of your own mind and body, but without judgment. And doing that naturally starts to loosen the grip of suffering and opens you up to a richer, more engaged life, truly moment by moment. It's a skill you build, not some final destination you arrive at.
I find that incredibly insightful. Yeah, it really reframes what I thought mindfulness was all about. It moves it away from some, I don't know, mystical concept into something incredibly accessible, practical, and yeah, scientifically grounded for just everyday life.
That's a crucial distinction. Thanks so much for breaking it all down for us. And if you're intrigued by these ideas, if you want to dive deeper into Professor Siegel's full research-based path to well-being, we absolutely recommend checking out The Science of Mindfulness, a research-based path to well-being. It's from the Great Courses, and you'll find links to it right there in the description.
Yeah, definitely check it out. And as Professor Siegel himself suggests, the real understanding, it comes from the doing, not just the knowing. So we'd love to hear from you. Let us know which idea maybe resonated with you the most in the comments below. Or even better, what's one small, informal mindfulness practice you're maybe going to experiment with in your own life this week? That taillight meditation, maybe. Just remember that profound thought he shares. Great questioning, great awakening. Little questioning, little awakening. No questioning, no awakening. What will you discover?